Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. I'm Carol Gable, president of the board currently. Whether you are visiting us for the first time or have been a member for many years, you are welcome here. Whatever faith you have known, if any, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. We are invited to bring our whole selves to this worship service, our doubts as well as our convictions, the pain and joy we have known, our longing for connection and understanding. Every part of you is welcome here. Our congregation acknowledges that the land on which Utica is situated is the ancestral lands of the United Nation, one of the original nations of the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois people. If you are visiting us today for the first time, either in person or online, we are glad you have joined us. We would love to learn more about you and connect you with our newsletter if you like. There will be a link in the chat to a form that we hope any online visitors would fill out, and we hope you'll stay here for informal conversation in breakout rooms after the service. We have a couple of announcements today. The first one is Reverend Evan Carville-Zemer is coming to Utica next weekend to help us as a congregation think about and plan our new ministry with Reverend Karen Brammer. I hope all of you will join us next Saturday at the church from 9 to 12 to talk about our history, our future, our hopes, our dreams. I think the weather is going to be good, so we're going to try to do it in the tent out back and chairs. I don't think we're going to be able to do it on Zoom, so please come and join us outside next Saturday. Also next Saturday, our Olmsted City celebrations in FT Proctor Park in the morning and the afternoon. Details will be shared in next week's newsletter, but I want to invite everyone here to specifically attend the dedication of the Peace Garden in the park. The sponsoring organizations, which include UU Utica, will be recognized for their support. And lastly, Katie has an announcement for us.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Katie, team lead for the membership team, and I have an announcement about greeters. If you are interested in being a greeter on Sunday mornings and want to know a bit more about what that involves, please join us next Sunday morning before service at about 9:30. We will have donuts and some coffee, and I'll be able to answer all your questions about helping us out in that way.
Thanks, Katie. Let us now open our hearts and minds to the experience of community and the wisdom of love.
Our chalice lighting this morning is titled Opening Words for Labor Day by Megan Visser. We enter the sanctuary for kindness and comfort. Many may rough-worn hands and aching backs be healed. We enter the sanctuary of hope for equality. May those who labor to survive live to know justice. We enter the sanctuary of love and vocation. May our bonds of solidarity be strengthened. We enter this meeting house of courage and friendship. May we proceed hand in hand toward freedom. Our opening hymn is in the gray hymnal, number 157. Step by Step, the Longest March, 157 in the hymnal.
We'll sing it twice through.
We're going to sing it twice through.
would like to preface our call to worship this morning with a quote from a former CEO of Walmart. "We like driving the car, and we're not going to give the steering wheel to anybody but us." The goal of the world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Nelson Mandela's famous proclamation that none are free until all are free resonates deeply within the hearts of most Unitarian Universalists. Indeed, it is the spirit, this principle, which is behind our belief. We cannot be free at the expense of others. We cannot have any kind of beloved community, much less have a world community without peace, freedom, and justice for all people. We can delude ourselves into thinking that this is so, that our communities are fair and free and just, but closing our eyes to the reality of life as experienced by others does not make them go away. As long as coal miners die young and in agony so that we can have cheap electricity, so long as farm workers and their children become desperately ill with no access to health care because of exposure to deadly chemicals that help make our food cheaper, as long as workers at our favorite big box store can be forced to work overtime without pay and to skip lunch breaks so that we can consume cheap consumer goods, goods which are manufactured by people whose working conditions are even more horrible, we are complicit, whether actively or passively. As Abraham Herschel, the great Jewish thinker and scholar, observed, we live in a world where few are guilty, but all are responsible. This principle reminds us that I am not free until you are free, and that an injury to one really is injury to all. This is what community really means. At this time, I would like to have Stephanie Markham come up to read our Together Time story.
All right. Well, I didn't bring my step stool, so I will try to heft the book over the podium so you can see it. And Asher is behind me, so if you see a head poking out either way, that's a child and not necessarily a little Klingon. Okay, so I'm going to read Unstoppable by Adam Rex, which is loosely about collective action. And it is a really funny book. If you've never read Adam Rex before, all his books are very funny. So please do laugh. It's called Unstoppable. And on our first page, a cat is sneaking up, and this crab looks unsure. And the crab goes click, 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 and clicks his pincers. And so the cat goes to sneak up on a bird and pounces, and the bird goes, ah! And the bird flies. And the bird is in a tree, and the crab is looking up. And the crab says, oh, if I might escape this life of muddy scuttling and fly to soar, happy and carefree. To which the bird says, oh man, are you joking? Do I look carefree? I almost got eaten by a cat. I just wish I could fly, that's all. And I wish I could pinch that cat on the nose with big, snapping claws. I can fly! I have claws! Crab bird! Bird rab! unstoppable! And the bird carrying the crab has pinched the cat right on the nose, and the cat goes away in disgrace. Oh boy, life is perfect now. Yes, perfect, except what? It's nothing. No, man, tell me. Well, I've always been a little envious of ducks. Who hasn't? They can fly and swim. So they approach this turtle. Hey, can we talk to you about something? And the turtle has joined their team up, and they are unstoppable! Crabbertle turd! Bird rabbertle! Crab turd! We've done it, my friends. Nothing can stand in our— Whoa! A bear has approached. What was that guy's problem? Should we go back and pinch him? I think perhaps we ought not to. Hey! A cat is one thing, but a bear? We should just fly away. No. No way. I'm going in. Hey, man. Steve. Hey, Steve. I don't know what you're so angry about, but I think maybe it's because you wish you could be a part of this incredible thing we've got going on. I think maybe you're lonely. I think maybe you could use some friends. Unstoppable! Bird rabbertle bear, crabber bear bird, bear crab, Steve! What are those yellow things? You haven't heard? They're digging up their lakefront and building a shopping mall. Coming soon, a new experience in lakeside shopping. But it's our home. My friends, we are lost. I know of no animal who can stop that. I have an idea. The president? Our team has gone to Washington, D.C. and kidnapped the president. I understand the problem, and I want to help, but I cannot. What? But you're the Queen of America! No, I'm the president. You need a new law to protect your home, and the president doesn't make the law. That's the job of Congress. Who's Congress? These animals sure are learning a lot. Unstoppable! Our bird, crab, turtle, bear president has now kidnapped all of Congress. And they say, stop! Congress is called to order. All in favor of making this lakefront a protected park for all the animals forever? Aye. Nay, nay, nay. The ayes have it. Hooray! And people say, if the night is clear and your heart is true, you can still see Congress of Bird Battle Bird Bear flying over this great land, passing laws and pinching the noses that need to be pinched. Our national bird is an eagle because that's easier to draw. The end. Highly recommend. I will have this book in the back of the sanctuary if you want to take a closer look after the service. And that is how some friends can team up and make significant change.
Thank you, Stephanie. The reading today, respect for the independent web of existence of which we are all a part. We are all connected. We are all interdependent. This principle is the embodiment of the old West African proverb, "We are, therefore I am." Christian liberation theologian Nancy Eiseland sums the principle up very well and with a few words. Interdependence, she writes, is not a possibility to be wished for from a position of power, but a necessary condition for life. This interdependence is the fact of both justice and survival. We can embody practical interdependence, not simply willing to be interrelated from a position of power, but depending on it from a position of need. We are fundamentally interrelated, and this principle challenges us to support and nurture the whole web of life, not just our little strands. The relative health and well-being of workers in this country and abroad relates very directly to our own health and well-being, physical, social, and spiritual. I would like to invite Eric up to the podium, who will give a reflection and a sermon, or reflection mostly. Eric, please come up.
Thank you. As I was telling Jeff on the phone earlier this last month, I'm a recovering Catholic, so when I saw sermon next to my name, I kind of freaked out. Thought that was only for priests, but here we are. First, I'd like to thank Jeff and all of you for having me today. It's an honor to speak and give this reflection/sermon. So the title of the reflection I wanted to give was "An attack against one is an attack against all." And very similar to the motto, an injury to one is an injury to all. But I can't come up with this. First time I heard it was from one of my colleagues, an organizer at Dartmouth with a student worker collective, who summed up what undergraduate students were fighting for across the country. And this is the motto I've come to see this entire labor movement and the organizing that is happening at Hamilton about. It is with an ethos of love and trying to build a beloved community. And when I think of beloved community, I most commonly think of what the late Bell Hooks wrote about, and my close mentor from Hamilton College, Margot Alcazar-Ray. But to get into how all this happened at Hamilton, I wish I could tell you I was the very first person to jump on this train. I was not, actually. I was a bit skeptical at first. Back in spring of 2021, the admissions office announced that in-person tours would resume when a lot of people still did not have the vaccine, and it was not easy to get. And it was also a time where technically students weren't allowed off campus. Now, was that rule followed? Probably not. But it was the double standard that was being put in place. We could accept people from all across the country who were not vaccinated, and we were supposed to be giving them tours. And that caused a really big outrage at first. And I was not privy to this conversation, but that's when the first talks of unionization started happening for admissions workers at Hamilton. So when I talk about admissions workers, there's two main groups of student workers. There's tour guides. I think the name's pretty self-explanatory. They give you a tour of the campus. And senior fellows. These are usually people who are seniors who give interviews and interview prospective students and give their thoughts on whether or not they'd be a good fit in the Hamilton community. So that was kind of the first rocking of the boat that my friend Izzy Rutke, who is now on the negotiating committee with me for Hamilton, first started talking to people about, well, maybe a union would be able to address this. And for a while, admissions rolled back their decision, but ultimately that same semester, in-person tours began again. Now, this past summer, in summer 2021, that's when everything kind of hit the fan, so to say. So in the summer, there was a group of summer tour guides that work full-time. There was a special circumstance where there were some people who were getting paid for their work, some who were only getting paid in gift cards, and then one or two people that were just volunteering but doing the same job as tour guide. So right there was an issue. And the people that were being paid in gift cards were sometimes traveling from Cooperstown because they were helping out the admissions office, and they were not being paid for the time they actually worked. And when they brought it up, it was like, no, this is a thank you for the work you're doing this summer. But they were doing the same work as all the other tour guides. So first, right there, discrepancy in who's getting paid for the work, and the college and admissions office committing wage theft for not properly paying individuals for the time that they worked. Now, I know saying this, many people have the image of Hamilton College as a very progressive, liberal institution. I can tell you that is not the case. I mean, it was founded by a man who came to upstate New York to convert Oneida people to Catholicism. So that's how we kind of got started. And the original purpose was to educate indigenous youth alongside white settler youth. And to my knowledge, there was not a single indigenous youth admitted to Hamilton at its founding. It's called the Hamilton Oneida Academy. And then was later, about 20 years later, changed to Hamilton College. So wage theft and people not getting paid. Two big issues. Also, Hamilton College was doing, the admissions office, I should say, was doing everything to make sure that people were not getting paid overtime. They would tell people, no, you have to remove this hour or two from your schedule, so it'd be 38 or 47 and not 41. And kind of and then also there was a period in 3 days where it was constantly raining and students went out to work. And they said, no, you have to go out and give tours. And that's the nature of our job. I've given tours in 0-degree weather, in blizzards, and that's just the nature of the job. But 3 or 4 tour guides end up getting sick. One of them, who was a volunteer, not getting paid at all. So, and kind of what the biggest issue was, that kind of was the breaking point, was a committee of summer workers, which I was not a part of at the time, collectively organized and went to the head of admissions and asked for a 70-cent raise. That didn't go over very well, as you can expect, and they were told that admissions did not have the authority to give people raises, which they are the direct supervisors and employers. They did. The breaking point came, though, when the person who led the call for a wage increase faced retaliation and was eventually fired 2 weeks later. And this was a model employee. You cannot find anyone, and I'm saying anyone, that would talk about Hamilton College in a positive light, that actually loved his job. There was someone about a year or two ago, right before COVID, where the president of the college caught them talking bad on a tour to prospective families. That person was not fired. No one is fired from admissions. But just so happens that the best employee that happened to ask for a raise, got fired. Similar to many of the circumstances now that we're seeing with Starbucks, with Amazon, is saying their reasoning for firing this employee was that there was a difference of opinion. And that was it. And legally, you are if you do not have a union, you're an at-will employee. You can be fired for whatever reason. They just might not like you that day. They can say you're gone. It's a bit different now with how the labor market's going. But at this point, some summer tour guides were ready to walk out. It had reached this point, and I caught wind of it and a couple other people did, and we said, hold on, you can't do that because you can get fired. If you don't have an authorized strike and you're an at-will employee, they can fire you for that, for leaving your job. So instead we turned our outrage, I guess I should say, into collective action. So at this point in the campaign, we started reaching out to all the summer tour guides, all the yearly tour guides, all the senior fellows, and we started signing authorization cards. Those cards basically say that, we authorize said union to be our collective bargaining agent. And at that point, once you have 30% of people in a unit signing cards, you can get an election with the National Labor Relations Board. Kind of technical, but we reached that and we filed. And the reaction was actually very similar to what the Walmart CEO had to say about driving the ship. We were told that a union would only hinder communication between employees and the employer, and that they supported student choice, but they didn't think a union was good, because as it would interfere with their academic education. What personally got me very upset was some of the messaging, especially from the head of admissions, was, well, do you really want to unionize with United Food and Commercial Workers? They're just grocery store employees. And honestly, we share a lot more in common with grocery store employees than the head of admissions who's making $300K a year, who's getting her checks all the time getting her checks on time, and there's no problems with them. So they also started holding one-on-ones, which is very common, and this is legal. Sometimes it was 2-to-1, 3-to-1, and they'd sit down with employees and say, well, the union probably isn't the best thing. One time, I was told actually that if we didn't follow what was in the contract, that the school had to fire us. So if there's a minimum hours of work and we didn't do it, the employer would have to fire us because the union said so, which is not true. I wish I could say that a lot of lies came out, and that's perfectly legal. Employers have the right to say, well, maybe a union is not the best thing for you. So by the time I got to this election, though, like I said earlier, I was personally, at first, one of the people that was kind of more skeptical that, well, maybe a union wouldn't be the best for us. And I actually quite benefited from the way admissions worked. There was a time, there's tour guide coordinators, so the head tour guides, basically. There's 3 positions, and I applied for one. I emailed them, and I was like, there's an opening. I'm very interested in the position. And they got back to me and said, well, you have the position. They didn't advertise it. They didn't let people know that it was even available. Since they liked me, they just gave me the position, when there was other people that were qualified as well and interested in the position. But I realized very quickly, and many did, so a lot of the people involved with the committee, that our fortunes can change very quickly. That one employee who was the best employee admissions had was fired because he asked for a raise. And they loved him. He was the best employee they could have ever asked for. And that's how he was treated. And also realizing that our fortunes are linked together. If one person's not getting paid, that's not only hurting them, that's hurting everyone. And one of the only ways to effectively and legally address those issues in the workplace is through a union. Now, that's not to say There might not be issues with unions, and it might not be complications with it. But it gives you a voice in the workplace. And, the labor movement, sometimes people forget, has brought many advances to labor rights in the past century. From the weekends, holidays, 40-hour work week, overtime. These are all things that happen because of organized labor, not because people simply politely asked for it. Now, just because we ended up winning our union election in 2520, while many students at Hamilton saw that, this issue clearly went beyond them, even if they had no issues with admissions, or if they were relatively well-liked, like me, that they knew this was the right decision to fight for everyone, because an attack against one is an attack against all. But admissions is an interesting place. Hamilton's student body is very socioeconomically not diverse. A lot of people from private schools, from New York City, boarding schools, from New England, who don't need the money. And since admissions did not guarantee a lot of hours, a lot of those students were from a higher socioeconomic status because they could afford to not have the hours, the consistent hours. One person whose father owns a bank on Wall Street told me that a union probably isn't going to help her that much. Well, you're probably right, because after you graduate, you're fine. There is no need of this. There is no need of a union for you in your mind, because you are benefiting from a system that has oppressed not only your fellow students and friends at Hamilton College, but across the country and the world. So it was a tight election. We won 25-20, 25 votes for, 20 against. A lot of that came from people who were like, well, maybe this wouldn't benefit me, / I've only worked here for a certain amount of time. There's a lot of people that worked in admissions that just got hired. So, this gig's not that bad. It's kind of flexible. I haven't had any real issues yet. And then later on, some people come to me and said, oh, maybe you guys were right, after being there for a couple more months. But that is to say that with an organizing ethos of love and care for every single individual, you can achieve things that are, honestly, that might seem impossible. Hamilton was the first undergraduate unit to actually unionize after Trump put in a rule saying undergraduates had no right to organize with unions. That was repealed about 5 or 6 months before we filed for our election. So we were the first one. And we have not been the last at Wesleyan, at colleges all across the country. This is continuing. But after we won the admissions election, resident advisors who live in dorms, act as resources, they filed for an election with United Food and Commercial Workers as well. They calculated, they get a stipend yearly for room. And with the amount of hours they worked, they calculated that they are paid about $1 an hour. But technically, the school is now saying that they are not eligible to unionize and is fighting that in court. That is to say, all of this, this is not where I thought I would have ended up when I first came to Hamilton College, believe me. This is not how I pictured my life going in my time at Hamilton. But unions are, I believe, and what I've experienced at Hamilton is one of the only effective ways in which to care for one another, to protect one another, and to speak out for one another when usually there is no other legal protections to do so in the workplace. And I'm not supposed to give updates on our negotiations, but for you folks, I'll break that one. One of the biggest things that actually the school just agreed to was before, if there was no tour to give, you'd only be paid for 30 minutes. So there were some times in the year where there's no tours and you're scheduled for 3-4 tours, so you get paid an hour or two For a lot of students that were on work study like myself, they need to get other jobs, or they need to quit to find a job that provided more hours. The school recently agreed to that students now have the option of getting paid 30 minutes if there's no tour, or they will guarantee that there will be work for them to do in the office for an hour and 15 minutes. That was big. In my time at Hamilton, there was only 3 times where I was asked to stay behind and do office work when there was no tour. So now through this union, this job is becoming more accessible to people whose fathers don't own banks on Wall Street, which is not many people, as you can imagine. And I was just, when I was sitting back there and I fully realized, oh my God, that was the first tangible thing that I've actually seen through this campaign so far. Because this, as many of you have seen in the news with Amazon, with Starbucks, this is not an easy process. Even once when you win an election, just to get to a first contract. And that can take, on average, 400 days, over a year. And the employer can put it off as long as they want, and there's almost no legal repercussions for it. It is not an easy process, but in this short time, that guarantee we've gotten from admissions is more than we've ever gotten in my 3 years at Hamilton. And it all started through care of one another. Some people at first were off-put. Well, it's only the summer tour guides that are facing this. So why do I have to care? Because it could be you the next day. Oh, so this is your friend, this is your coworker, this is someone that you work alongside every single day. You're fine with them being treated poorly? By having them be abused in your workplace? This ethos of beloved community, of loving one another, is not easy, especially when you have to apply that to your supervisors, who tell you, we won't give you a raise, even though Hamilton admissions workers are the lowest paid on campus. And they arguably play a very important role in making sure that the college continues financially. So what I can gather from all of this and share with all of you today is that I encourage all of you to go into your workplaces, talk with your coworkers, talk about issues that you've seen, because it's almost 100% likely, actually, that everyone else in that business, in your workplace, has had the same exact thought at one point or another. And for Hamilton, we asked nicely at first, it was denied, and we said, okay, now we're gonna go form a union. So talk with your fellow coworkers and emphasize that this is coming from a place of care, for a place of wanting to improve not only the status of the company that you're at, but also your own lives. I can say that I am here. My grandparents actually were 2 members of unions. My grandfather was part of the Teamsters. My grandmother, an immigrant from Cuba, was part of the International Lady Garment Workers Union down in Jersey City, New Jersey. And the only reason she had health care was because of the union. The only reason she had any pension now is because of the union. When my mom was about 16, she had appendicitis and she almost died. She was in the hospital for about 2 weeks. My grandmother who was a single mother working in a factory, paid almost nothing for that hospital stay. There's a lot of sometimes belief that unions are bad. They just want your dues money. I viewed it as an investment in yourself, because without that, my grandmother paying dues, I would not be here, my mom would not be here. So I guess I have to thank the union that got the health care. And that is, to wrap this all up, is to say, alone we are vulnerable and prone to individual temptations that can very easily overwhelm us. Together, we are mighty, with a common good ever closer in sight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. I would like to introduce the next hymn. It is number 109, As We Come Marching, Marching, number 109 in the hymnal.
I think this one came out of those garment workers from back when.
Today's meditation. God of justice, we pray for all workers that they would receive fair compensation and treatment in their labor, for those who seek work, provide jobs, both citizen and immigrant alike, for those who cannot work, provide sustenance. We'll now have our offering. We want to say that we know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit ourselves together to ensure the funds we gather do a greater good for ourselves and our world than they could have done alone. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation. May we give in love and hope. Now we will extinguish our chalice, and please join in with the words in your order of service, or maybe on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
Our benediction this morning is an excerpt from the UUA 2017 Statement of Conscience. A moral economic system would include equal pay for equal work and elimination of the racial, ethnic, and gendered wealth gap, a major societal investment in communities that have been left out and locked out, a guaranteed minimum income for everyone, a minimum wage indexed for inflation that provides a living wage with benefits regardless of disability or ability, a tax structure that rewards the creation of good-paying jobs, worker protections and rights, a union movement, and a worker-friendly trade agreements, a growing sector of locally owned businesses and worker-owned cooperatives, and wages that honor the work of hands as well as that of minds. Now, go in peace, celebrate the beauty, search for the good, and may all that we do be done in love. And now our postlude.
As I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on that sign it said no trespassing. But on the other side, it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, to the Redwood Forest, to the Gulf Stream border. This land was made for you. Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking back through the highway. Nobody living can make me turn back. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream border. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me. Woody. Happy Labor Day.